The next book that we read was Citizen by Claudia Rankine, and I really, um, I just thought this was a really interesting book, uh, both because of the really unique style that it was written in. It was kind of one of those like books where you don't really know exactly what's going on because there's no narrator necessarily, but there's just all these little flashes, these little glimpses into the mind of this woman, Claudia, and um, I think that it was just brilliantly done because it showed in a way that mere descriptions or mere, scientific jargon could never really show racism. And you can talk about racism, and you can teach about racism in a classroom or things like that. But it's just there's no way you can really show it without having these kind of secondhand experiences is, I think, the best way that it can be done. And so I also really loved the microaggressions. It's called a primer of microaggressions. It was one of the readings that we had that kind of went with it. But I just thought that was really interesting reading through that. And it's talking about um, different like themes that people portray of people from minorities, whether that be blacks or Latinos or you know whomever. And I just thought that was really interesting. The things that we all do. I myself am guilty of doing these things, and just it's a way that you think, and I think that's so interesting because we often look at racism like, oh, it's what you do, and oh, that was racist. What you just did was racist, or what you just said was racist. But like this gets at I think, the bigger problem, which is like our thoughts and our thoughts as a society. And so just things like, the very first one says it's like we portray them as second class citizens, like people from minorities. And so, things like not knowing the name of low level workers, of the janitor. How many of us know the name of the janitor at our favorite coffee shop or at our schools even, and yet we know so many other people, but they're lower, they're beneath us. And so and then also Claudia talks in her book about one time when she was at the grocery store or at the coffee shop, I don't remember, but she talks about how someone came in and cut in front of her, and it wasn't that someone cut in front of her, it was that when he said it, when he said sorry, he said, I just didn't see you there. I didn't see you there. I didn't recognize that there was a human being there. And I think that was so, like, in some ways devastating, but also like really eye-opening to me to think about those things. And those types of things still happen to this day. I mean, this book was written just a few years ago, and so it's just really interesting to me that those happen, and how many times do we not even realize that this is happening, and yet this is still happening. And so I just really love the way that Claudia brought that to light. um, for anyone who read her book, you don't have to be black to read the book and understand what she's feeling. She's such a great writer that she writes what she's feeling, how she felt, and she helps you to get into her shoes and get into her brain and feel the types of feelings that she felt. But yeah, I really think it was interesting. One of also another reading that week with that book was the Whistling Vivaldi, and I loved one of the quotes from that. It says, one's reputation, whether false or true, cannot be hammered into one's head without having some effect on one's character. And I think that's so true for us. I mean, for me, I'm going to be a teacher, and I know all of us have different places. A lot of us will have kids someday, or other people that we mentor or are in charge of. And like, what are we hammering into people's heads? And I think that you can have a good effect. You can have a good effect through hammering something into someone's head by saying positive things and helping people to encouraging them and helping them to think. But so often the thing that we hammer into people's head is, oh, well, you're not good enough, or like Claudia talks about in her book, oh, you're a second class citizen. Oh, you're not as good as everyone else. Oh, you're not worth remembering, or I don't even view you as a person who I need to stand in line behind. Um, and so I think for me that was really, really key because, I live in a rural, primarily white town, and I don't interact with people of different ethnicities than my own hardly ever. And so I think it was really eye-opening to me to see um, how that has affected my journey, how being from a white rural town has affected my personal journey, but also how I can kind of choose to shape my personal journey and choose to let this book and this experience shape me, and to um, really look at myself critically, and look at the things that I do critically, and to watch for those signs of microaggression in myself and in others, and not be afraid to call it out and to really call it as I see it. Um, because the only way we're going to change this, you know, the society of America, this theme, this climate in America, is if we're doing something about it. And so, yeah, it was really a great book.